Okay guys, welcome back to the functional isometric exercise library. Today we're going to be talking about how to set up for each of the functional isometrics and ultimately go through the really simple hack to create an absolutely fixed immovable resistance that you can generate maximum force within. Now obviously the fixed lifting strap on the forklift lifting strap is great for the equipment free variations, but ultimately it's never going to yield the same amount of force as you will with a barbell against a fixed object. Now for this you're going to need either a squat rack or a power cage. It's that simple, okay? Again, if you don't have access to these, you can always do the equipment free versions, or as you'll see within the isometric deadlift variation, there is actually methods in which you can utilise the forklift lifting strap to be able to set it up. But like I said, the more favourable solution will be the power cage or the squat rack. All you need from there is a figure 8 lifting strap. Simply put, it couldn't be easier. Loop both over the bar like this, okay, and then you just take the other end over like this. The other end goes underneath the safety pin. So nice and easy. As you can see there, I'll do it again. Like this. Loop it under, okay, and then that is trapped in place. Isn't going anywhere. Again, I prefer this version to loading super maximal amounts of weight onto the bar, simply because it's easier to adjust the range of motion. Once that's anchored onto there, all you do is adjust the height of the safety pins to whatever range of motion you're aiming to work. And again, trust me, as long as the squat rack is either bolted to the ground or you have enough weight on the rack itself, that isn't going anywhere. And this is a £70 squat rack from Amazon, I think. So if that can anchor down when you're in a power cage, it's not going anywhere. Trap it in place and then the bar is stuck to the rack. Now like I said, for this you're going to need to weight down the squat rack by quite a significant amount if it isn't pinned into the floor already. Now within most traditional gyms, even if the squat rack isn't bolted to the ground, they tend to weigh quite a lot. You won't necessarily have to use the same amount of plate weight as you would popping it on the bar. Here unfortunately this squat rack is quite old and quite cheap, so it only weighs about 50 kilograms if that on its own, in which case I'm going to have to load up quite a lot of weight onto the rack itself to keep it bolted in place. But ultimately it provides that fixed resistance that we need to be able to generate as much tension as possible. With setting up for the squat itself, there's one thing that you have to bear in mind. The same position that you would utilise within the back squat, that's what we're trying to replicate. This is one of the reasons why, particularly in the early stages, there's a lot of tempo-based movements. There's a 3-phase eccentric pause squats, there is more pause squats, there's myostatic squats, there's a high frequency of squatting movements so that you are actually aware of your position. Ultimately, when it comes to doing the isometric work, we want the highest amount of transfer from the static contractions into the dynamic performance, in which case we want the motor pattern execution to be relatively similar and the same kind of intermuscular coordination and so on. Now, when we're getting under the bar, 2 things that I recommend. Number 1, set your feet first, okay, slightly further in front of the bar. Again, think about it, you want the bar over the midline of your foot when you're performing a back squat. So in this case, put your feet under the midline of the bar. That way you know that you have to mould yourself underneath the implement. And number 2, take a wider grip than you normally would. If you're back squatting correctly anyway, then chances are you'll be performing a decent amount of thoracic tightness and squeezing your shoulder blades together in order to keep that stability. It's going to be a little bit harder doing it from here, okay? But remember, we don't have to necessarily stabilise the weight in the same way, so we can get away with having a little bit less thoracic tightness in the position that we'll be in. So I'll give you a couple of demonstrations now, and then we'll see how we change the range of motion. One thing I will stress with this isometric squat variation is be aware of the activation of your hip musculature. This obviously depends on how dominant you are in one variation over the other, but ultimately from anecdotal experience, when a lot of people do the isometric squats, they tend to bias their quads quite a lot, okay? Just because the position that they get themselves in, they don't like being leant over and they don't necessarily have that proprioceptive feedback that you get within the eccentric contraction. So a lot of people take a bit too upright of a torso position and tend to bias their quads and utilise and transmit a lot of the force through their patella tendon. So just really make sure that you're keeping the knees in line with the toes, driving through your heels, trying to activate the glutes and the posterior chain. So depending on the number of holes within this squat rack, you can actually do a contraction at each level. Within the Superhuman Protocol, we tend to split the range of motion into thirds: first third or lower third, middle and upper third. As the program starts to expand and there's a little bit more research on the topic, we might start to change a couple of different variations. So again, traps in place. Set my foot position, take a slightly wider grip than I normally would. Brace, down, get the bar into position. So again, I'm at a slightly higher range of motion than I was before. Setting my position, and then first rep is progressive, second rep, holistic. Ultimately, that is how you set up for the isometric squat. If you haven't come here directly from a Superhuman Strength Protocol and you haven't checked it out already, then please do so. The link will be included below. As always, stay strong and I'll see you on the next one.